Hello guys and welcome back. Today I thought we'd do a little bit of a different video. We go over the basic servicing and maintenance of your patrol and what you should be looking out for and what you should be checking on your patrol regardless of whether you have warranty or your warranty has run out. Maintenance and servicing is a very important part of vehicle longevity, and if you can do it yourself, it can save you a bit of time and money waiting around at a mechanic to get it done. So without further ado, let's crack on with today's video. Arguably one of the most important places to start with your maintenance and servicing is the engine. This is the beating heart of your vehicle and what makes it run. So if you can do good maintenance and keep on top of it, your engine will be more likely to live longer than if not. So there's a lot of different things we're going to cover in the engine bay today because there's a lot of different things to keep on top of. But first off, we'll start with the air filter. So the air filter can be this sort of a style, or it can be a panel style filter. You could have an airbox in here that is for a snorkel, or you might not, but it's all the same premise. So for me, I obviously have the Radius Fabrications airbox and snorkel. So for me, my cold air comes in from the top of the snorkel, moves its way down into the airbox, filters through this pod filter in here, which I'm going to change for a more four-wheel drive style, more finer micron filter, so we can filter out more dust and dirt, and then it continues its way past the MAF sensor into the throttle body and then into the engine. So as you can see, there's a bit of crud and crap and dirt and dust and stuff inside the airbox. Something to keep in mind when you have a snorkel is you will get water down the snorkel if it does rain, or you go through a big puddle, or you do a water crossing or something. You are more than likely going to get water inside your airbox. Now, it is just the way that it happens. I mean, you've got a 5-inch tube running down into your airbox, so it's just going to happen. So make sure you take good care of your filter and have a look at it every now and again. Obviously very easy with a airbox design like this. With the Perspex top, I can see the filter and how dirty or how clean it is. Now this is pretty clean. There's a couple of little bugs and crap in there, but apart from that, it's pretty clean. Something I notice a lot too is when it rains really heavily, I typically always get water in here. It'll start to pool up down this bottom section, and that's because it is designed to slope down. As you can see, it slopes down to that bung there, and you simply just remove that and the water flows out. So something to keep in mind, if you're going to go for a drive after you've had a big downpour, just remove your bung, get the water out, and you won't have anything to worry about. But apart from that, well designed and a good peace of mind if you are doing water crossings. Moving on from that, we have our MAF sensor. This is something that you need to check every service, I would say. Every service is good preventative maintenance, and just have a look at it. See if it looks dirty, damaged, or otherwise. Typically, you'll start to notice things if it is starting to get dirty or damaged. Your fuel economy will be down, your power will be down, it might start throwing codes, and it might start doing other funky things knowing patrols. So for me, I've got some little Allen head bolts to take out of here, and this easily just pops out. It's a really good seal, so it is actually in there very, very snugly, which makes it a really good fit for this, and I know that there's going to be no dust or dirt get behind there. So one thing to mention with MAF sensors is they need a specific MAF sensor spray similar to a degreaser or a throttle body cleaner, but it is designed specifically for MAF sensors as they are very sensitive. So ensure you're using the right stuff for your MAF sensor, otherwise you could run into dramas. Of course, a bit of throttle body cleaner could get you out of trouble if you really had to, but it is advised to use the proper stuff. So check that, give it a clean every service, and you won't have any dramas with your MAF sensor. Moving through, we have this piece of silicone or rubber hose that connects us to the throttle body. Now the throttle body will get dirty over time, so it's very important to give that a good clean. Again, every service, give it a nice spray with some throttle body cleaner. Make sure it is throttle body cleaner. Degreaser can cause issues, so use proper throttle body cleaner. Again, degreaser could get you out of trouble, although it's definitely not recommended. Clean that with a nice rag, give it a nice wipe down. Try not to move the actual valve inside the throttle body. Be very gentle with it, as they can be pretty temperamental on electronic throttle bodies. So just be mindful of that and be gentle when you are doing it, but make sure you give it a good spray and a good wipe down. Secondary to this, after every service, it is advised to use this stuff. This is the Liquid Moly petrol engine intake decarb. So it cleans and decarbonizes engine intake and upper cylinders. So the way that the petrol fueling system is designed, I can't remember the acronym of it, but it is to do with how the fuel is injected into the valves. It likes to carbon up the valves very, very easily. Now, I did see a photo, hopefully I'll be able to find it again to put it into this video, but I did find a photo which was a perfect illustration of what happens to the valves even after, I think it was maybe 30 or 40,000 Ks. So the valves were very gummed up. Now this stuff is recommended, and it is recommended to do this after every service. So every 10,000 or 5,000 Ks, I would definitely recommend doing this. So it does have the directions online and also on the back of the can. Very easy to follow, and it's a very simple process. So it's got a little hose that comes off, and basically you put it in your throttle body here, you spray it down throttle body. You'll have to open up the butterfly a little bit to be able to get to the actual squirt it in past the butterfly. Again, be careful with this, as I did mention before, they can be temperamental. Squirt it down in there, and make sure you squirt a good amount in there, and then connect everything all up, because the car won't start without the MAF sensor being like plugged into the loop. So make sure you connect it all back up, start the car, and follow the directions. This is just a bit of preventative maintenance again to ensure that you don't gum up your valves, because yeah, it does happen very quickly, and especially if you're using bad quality fuel, it'll definitely speed that process up. Carboning of valves and whatnot can definitely cause power degradation over time, and in turn make you lose a lot of fuel economy as well. So it's important to give that a good clean out every service to ensure that you're not building up carbon too quickly. Now this stuff won't remove everything, it's just a really good way to get rid of a lot of the looser and big stuff. A lot of stuff that is really baked on or has been there for a while won't come off as well, so it's good to keep on top of this from an early stage. So I started doing mine at my 10,000 K service, and I'll do it again very shortly, as it's due for its 20,000 K service in about 500 kilometers. So ensure you're getting onto that, because it is a big thing with these patrols. Next is your coolant. So this is your coolant reservoir. I think there's two in the patrol or something. The bottle is actually pretty hard to read, especially because it gets pretty dirty sitting where it does. There is a min and a max on it, and yeah, you might have to give it a good clean to actually see what your coolant's doing, or you can just open the cap and have a look that way. So this side's a little bit easier to see, and you can see that we're sitting perfectly. There's the min and the max down in there. You can see there down the bottom right corner, there's your minimum and maximum, and we're sitting perfectly fine. I am on a bit of a hill here, so you can't really get a good reading, but I know that the coolant's perfectly fine. Next is your battery. Yes, we do have a battery voltage meter in the car, which is very handy, and you can check on the state of your battery. Now, as you can see, there's these screw tops here. Now, this battery can be serviced, although probably just recommended to go and get a new battery, to be honest. So in here, you have all your cells, and there's also a battery acid or a demineralized water or whatever in there, and if you have a bit of fluid on the bottom of your plug, then you're good to go. You'll definitely notice issues with your battery if your car's not starting as well, or it's taking a bit of time to crank over, perhaps it's not starting at all. You'll know that the battery's on its way out. Now, these batteries are fine for the life of whatever it might be, 3 to 5 years, but I'd definitely look at getting a sealed battery that doesn't require maintenance, and something that's a little bit better, especially depending on the climate you live in. If you live in a hot climate like I do, your batteries typically tend to last not as long as what they would in a more temperate climate. The heat and the humidity will ruin them over time, and you typically won't get as many years out of them as you would otherwise. So getting a nice red top Optima or something like that is definitely recommended, and will ensure that you've got plenty of cold cranking amps and plenty of power to power the vehicle, and you won't run into too many issues. Next up here we have our brake fluid. And as you can see, we're sitting perfectly at the max and the color looks good. Good way to also double check what your brake fluid's doing is take the cap off. I don't know why it's so hard. It's got a child lock on it. Anyway, apparently it doesn't want to open. But anyway, you take the cap off and you give it a smell, and if it smells real funky, it's probably time to give it a change. Also, if the color changes from this nice sort of clearish yellow to a really dark color, sort of what like you can see down here, although it's just sort of like the shadowing of the car, then you'd be definitely looking at flushing your system and putting some new stuff in, because your brake fluid is very important. This little reservoir here is for your power steering. So as you can see, it's got a couple of different little indicators on it. It's cold minimum, cold max, and it's also got a hot min and a hot max as well. So as you can see, we're sitting at the cold max and we're perfect. And again, this can smell quite funky and burnt too if your power steering is overdue for a service. Give that a flush, replace it with some nice fresh fluid, and you'll be sweet to go. There's plenty of tutorials and stuff on YouTube and the internet in regards to how to do your power steering. Very simple process, and only will take you, half an hour to an hour to do it properly, and isn't, a very difficult thing to do. And I definitely encourage that you do that yourself, because save yourself probably a couple $100 doing that. Another thing to look at too is all your coolers. Obviously these things sit at the front of the car and they can get gummed up with bugs, dirt, mud and stuff very easily. As you can see, I've got quite a few bugs and stuff in mine, bit of grass and crap. And it's recommended every so often when you wash your car, just blow it out and make sure that there's nothing impeding any of the cooling systems. Now obviously you've got to be pretty careful because these aluminium fins can be bent very easily. So it's recommended not to use a pressure washer directly spraying on them. Use a garden hose with less pressure, and just do your best to get off what you can. Some stuff will be pretty stuck on there, but just do your best. And if you have to use pressure washer, use it from a little bit of a distance away, so you're not going to ruin your fins. Next, of course, is our engine oil. So here's your dipstick down on the driver's side of the engine. Pull it out. It's a rather long one. And have a look at your engine oil. So as you can see, mine is due. Absolutely, mine is very much due. You can see it's a very golden brown color, and it's definitely due for a change. But you can see that we are within spec and we have plenty of oil within the engine. Now don't just take your first reading as what your engine oil is doing. Get yourself a rag and wipe down your dipstick with a rag. Get it off. Make sure there's no leftover engine oil on it. Poke it back down in the dipstick hole and take another reading, and this will ensure that you get the right reading. Obviously as your oil pressure comes up and your engine's been running, the oil on the dipstick will move because it's being forced up through there. So ensure you do this when it's cold as well, and on as flat as a surface as you can to get an accurate reading. Otherwise you might not get a correct reading and cause yourself some dramas with an underfill or an overfill. There's your engine oil cap as well. So obviously that's where you put your engine oil in. Make sure you do your research and figure out how much engine oil it actually needs and what type is suitable for your VK56. As there is a few different versions, and depending on your climate as well will depend on what sort of a weight oil you should get. So moving under the car now, it's very important to take a good look under your car and have a look at all your lines, hoses, cables, and all the rest of the crap that's under here. Make sure you have a good look at your bushings too. Check your CVs and the boots as well. Make sure there's no splits, cracks, or otherwise imperfections or damage. And just have a good look over everything. Make sure no bolts are coming loose, and make sure that everything looks serviceable and isn't going to cause any dramas on a trip. So a lot of common bushes to file. Upper control bushes up here, your ball joints down here. These are pretty hard to sort of get a good gauge on, but you can get your finger in there and give them a bit of a feel, and if they feel, oh yeah, that feels nice, it's nice, it doesn't feel very brittle, it feels nice and soft, and I can feel that there's no cracks or any parts of it coming off. So I know that they're good to go. and I'd like to hope so at 20,000 Ks. Next, have a look at your exhaust as well. Make sure there's no big marks or anything, black marks coming up around flanges and things. This will be a good indicator of an exhaust leak and can cause issues moving into the future. And I mean, it'll probably sound good, but it's best just to make sure you've got good seals on the exhaust, and it'll probably stink. So this here coming off the transfer case is your front drive shaft. It's got plenty of different names, you call it whatever you like. It's the shaft that drives the front wheels. Here is the uni, and these can be greased. So ensure that you get your grease gun onto these and give them a good grease up. Make sure that there are plenty of grease around there so they can stay lubricated and not dry out, especially if you're doing a lot of dusty or water crossings and that sort of thing. As you can see on the transfer case, it has this seal around it here. Have a look around the fill and drain holes as well. Make sure it's not leaking. You don't want this stuff to be leaking anywhere, otherwise you'll definitely run into big dramas. This big black thing here, this is for your transmission. As you can see here, here's the bell housing of the transmission that bolts onto the engine, and have a good look around that. Make sure that there is no leaking happening up around this area, and also have a look around your bolts as well. Make sure they're nice and dry and not leaking either. The back of your transfer case, check here as well, and this bolt up here, and just ensure there's no leaks and nothing looks wrong. Make sure this plug's also nice and firm in there as well, and yeah, just overall make sure it's in good condition. Now, transfer case can definitely be serviced by yourself. The fluid for it isn't too expensive. Have a good look around. Make sure you use genuine fluids with these. A lot of people say that Penrite also is quite okay as well. Although if your car is still in warranty, I'd definitely be using genuine fluids, just so then you can, you know, say that, yeah, I've used genuine fluids, and Nissan can't crack the shits if they find that it, you know, that doesn't have genuine Nissan fluid in it, because you sort of have to be a little bit careful with that, because Nissan will crack the shits, and yeah, you don't want that. So obviously the higher plug is your fill and the lower one is your drain. Make sure you take the fill plug off first, so you know that you can actually refill the whatever you're changing the fluid in, and then take the drain off, so you know that you can put the fluid back in when you take it out. Nothing worse than taking out the drain and then realizing, uh-oh, the fill plug is seized and I can't actually put any fluid in. So just check that and make sure it's all sweet to go. And transmission as well, that can be serviced by yourself. Again, use genuine fluid. Genuine fluid is quite expensive, but I mean, like I said, these are very particular and they do want genuine fluid. And again, you know, if you're in warranty, just, yeah, use the genuine fluid or get it serviced by Nissan, so you can say, hey, look, you idiots, you service this, you know, why is it not working properly, or, you know, why am I having dramas? So, you know, you can't put the blame on yourself. Again, moving down, here is your tail shaft, drive shaft, rear shaft, whatever you want to call it. Again, this can be greased. It does have grease nipples, so make sure you grease that up. Mine are probably due for it. I did it nearly 10,000 Ks ago, so I'll do it again and make sure it's got plenty of grease in it. You can see that there is still some grease around here, although it's looking a bit crap and can definitely do with some fresh stuff in there. Any sort of industrial grease will do. I'll show you the grease that I use, and it seems to do a perfect enough job. When you're greasing something, you want to look where the grease actually exits. As you can see there's a bit of a slit. Make sure when you're pumping your grease in that there's grease coming out of the slit there, and then you'll know that, yeah, cool, I've put enough in, and you won't have any dramas there. Grease that up. Don't worry if you notice grease and stuff being flicked up onto the bash plate of the fuel tank here. It just means that, you know, as the tail shaft is spinning, that the grease is just getting pushed through and it's pumping out a bit of excess, and that's fine, don't stress. Now your handbrakes as well. Handbrakes are absolutely shocking on this. Mine does absolutely nothing, and it's definitely due for an adjustment. Yeah, it's terrible. I can have the car in neutral, handbrake on, and it'll still roll down my driveway. So that's pretty bad. Moving down to the end of the car, again, check your bearings, check your bushes, and make sure that they're all serviceable. Again, the rear of the tail shaft can be greased as well, so make sure you do that. And here's the rear diff. Again, can be serviced and is recommended to be done every 20,000 Ks, depending on what you're doing. Obviously, if you're doing four-wheel driving, going through water crossings, towing, definitely do it every 20,000. If you're not really doing those sort of things, you can push it out to a little bit further, but it's definitely recommended to yeah, change that out. I don't know, there probably is some genuine oil that you can use for the diff, although with a diff, as long as you get the right viscosities, they won't be too finicky with how, you know, they're not too precious, and they won't really mind what fluid you put in there, what brand, just as long as the viscosities are right, and do your research before you do that. And otherwise, just check all lines and make sure everything looks good and as it should. Make sure there's no weird anomalies, no plugs undone, and all lines look in good condition. Here's your front diff as well. This definitely does need to be serviced as well. Same with the rear, do it at the same time to save any dramas. Obviously I've got my bash plate under here, which is hiding the sump and sump plug. So obviously if you've got a bash plate, you'll have to take that off. Some of them have inspection ports which you can take off and just do it that way, which is also rather easy. Make sure you're changing out your oil filter as well. Obviously don't leave that sitting there. That needs to be serviced every time you change the oil. All right, moving to your wheels, tires, and brakes now. Have a look at your tires, have a look at your wear indicators, and make sure that you've still got plenty of tread left. As you can see, these tires are about due for a change. I mean, they do have plenty of tread left on them, although you can start to see that they've got cracks forming, and especially on the other side, there's quite a few chunks actually missing out of the tread blocks. When you start to notice this sort of thing, yeah, it's definitely time to change the tires. These are a bit old. These are, there you go, you can see these were manufactured in 2019, so they are a bit old and they're definitely due for changing. But like, you know, these were what come on the wheels when I bought them from auction, so yeah, I'm just rolling with them for now. But it's definitely time to get these changed over. Moving down to our brake rotors, have a look at the face of the rotor. Get in there and have a feel. Feel especially the top. And if you can feel a lip, it's probably time to change your rotors out, or get them machined at least. I definitely recommend just changing them, and these ones are completely fine. Also, it's recommended to check your brake pads as well. So jack the car up and take a wheel off and have a good look at your brake pads. Do this for all of them because pad wear will be slightly different on each rotor. Pad wear will be different on each corner of the vehicle. It won't be too much, hopefully, but it can definitely be a good indicator that something's going on if you're getting excessive pad wear on one side of the vehicle. So have a good look, and you might need to take the rotor off, get the brake pads out, and have a good look inside the caliper and give it a grease and see if it isn't seized or something like that. That may mean that you know, your brake caliper needs a service or it needs a rebuild, and yeah, definitely have a good look at that and see what's going on. Next thing to have a good look at too is your HBMC. So these can fail every so often, randomly. It doesn't, you know, really, you know, it can happen at really any time of its life. So have a good look at them, make sure there's nothing leaking, make sure they're in good condition, and you'll definitely feel if there's something going wrong, and you'll definitely notice the hydraulic fluid as well. So have a good look on all four corners and make sure that they're sweet to go. Now that's pretty much the basic sort of maintenance and servicing of your Patrol. Get in amongst it, have a good look around your engine bay and under the car, and you'll quickly notice if something doesn't look right. It's pretty obvious when you see something that's not right, and you'll be able to sort of narrow down what it is fairly quickly. Now if you feel confident to do it yourself, absolutely get in there and have a good crack. That's what it's all about, learning new things. There really isn't too much that you can stuff up on a car. Obviously, if you're not confident doing it or you're not sure, you know, take it to Nissan or take it to a good qualified mechanic who has worked on these things to get it done properly. But if you do have the mechanical knowledge and the tools to do it, definitely have a go yourself, because it's very rewarding to be able to fix your own vehicle, and it could save yourself a lot of time and money when you're out on the tracks. Definitely do your research and figure out how to do things too if you're interested to learn. If you are interested to learn, I'm more than happy to do some videos on a few different things into the future, so do let me know if that is something of interest. Now obviously, like I did say, if you are not confident doing things, just don't do it. Especially when it comes to really like critical things like fluids or brakes. Yeah, just leave it alone and get somebody to do it for you, because yeah, you can imagine what could happen. Apart from that, you know, there isn't really too much you can stuff up, as long as you have a good mechanical mind and you remember how things go back together and you do your research beforehand. So guys, that'll do it for today's video. I hope you guys have learnt something. Maybe are now going to go out and check your vehicle and see what it's doing and see what your servicing records are. And you know, I definitely recommend going into your vehicle and having a good check your fluids and oils regularly, just to make sure that everything is in tip-top condition, because you do not want anything happening to your vehicle, as it will be very costly, especially if you're out of warranty. So guys, thank you very much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, make sure you subscribe, like and comment if you want to know something more about these patrols and how to do servicing and maintenance on them. I'll be very keen to put some videos out on that, so let me know if that's something you would like to see. As always guys, stay safe out on the tracks, and I'll see you in the next video.